Welcome to the 3 Knockdown Rule. Starring Mario Lopez and Steve Kim. Presented by Hustler Casino.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 3 Knockdown Rule brought to you by Hustler Casino is in effect. I'm your co-host, Steve Kim, joined by our Del Griffith, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Mario Lopez.
Hey, I like that. Salute to you, Kimster. The wig is looking tight, I must say. You're kind of winning me over. Well, the cut is good, and you've got the semblance of sideburns.
That's what I do.
Let's keep that going. Let's not go back to Kim Jong-un. You're looking really, really good. Full silver fox. You're winning me over.
You and Whitlock, both.
Winning me over.
Yes.
Winning me over. Distinguished. Shout out to Smoking Tim Frazier and, of course,
Tino on the edits. All right, the bout sheet for this week's show. Thank you very much. In Viva Las Vegas, we have the fight review, fight preview, Asked Mario, and a bevy of final flurries. But we want to let you know, Hustler Casino is celebrating its 24th year anniversary by giving away a whopping $55,000 in cash on Saturday, June 22nd. Play now to earn drawing tickets so you can win big. Located just 15 minutes south of downtown LA, Hustler Casino is the perfect place for Pai Gow, poker, baccarat, and more. Visit hustlercasino.com for more info.
I'm looking forward to going back soon, by the way.
Yes.
We had a good time. They had good food. We got to do a nighttime show out there. We'll invite everybody out to come hang with us. We'll have like a live audience.
A 3 Knockdown Rule fight party.
There you go.
Stay tuned for further details. All right, let's get started.
Round 1.
Round number 1 from the MGM Grand on Amazon Prime, and still the WBA lightweight champion of the world, Gervonta Tank Davis, with a highlight reel knockout over Frank Martin in 8 to improve his record to 30-28. Mario, are Tank Davis fights kind of like that old fable of the tortoise and the hare?
I've always liked Tank. I like the way he carries himself. He's a humble guy, and he's actually pretty cool when he's in there in his post-fight interviews. I've always just kind of liked his vibe, and I really have enjoyed him as a fighter. He's always exciting. Every punch is thrown with bad intentions. He's very economical. He's a smart fighter. Much is made of his power, but he's smart. He walks that tightrope of talented fighter with a high IQ, but at the same time, he is so economical. He almost ends up giving some rounds away, but he will walk you down. If you don't have the power coming back that he will respect and make him take pause, then he will inch by inch walk you down. Even if he crosses over your feet, you're not even supposed to cross over your feet, but he does it so he's out of range and he's conserving a lot of energy. And then once he gets close, he lays traps, sets you up. He has that beautiful left upper hook counter that I love. That's so great. And he eventually will start letting his hands go, chop you down, and knock you out. Sometimes he doesn't even need to chop you down. He's got the power where it's a one-hitter quitter. And that's exactly what happened with Frank Martin, who had some success in the first few rounds. He was outboxing him, and he was stealing those rounds. But then, of course, you ask yourself, is he able to pull this off for 12 rounds? No one's been able to do that. He ended up getting a little too comfortable against the ropes. That was the beginning of his demise. And he answered with that beautiful uppercut, followed up by another left cross. And that was all she wrote. And Tank looked much more in the post-fight interview, much more mature, composed. I believe he's either having another kid or he just had another child. I think he's like kind of grown up.
Yeah.
And you really, the biggest factor there to me was his big fight experience. I think he had like something 80 championship rounds, and this is Frank's first championship fight. But the poise, the experience, along with his IQ and power, it was a nice showcase for Tank. And he's one of the big players in the division. I tip my hat to him.
Some would argue that by splitting with Floyd Mayweather, Gervonta Davis got rid of a child. Now, with that being said...
So wait, I don't know what's true and what's not, Kim. Did he split? Was he not? I know that Floyd was doing... Well, it's so petty, man. Releasing that
He's
video.
so petty. He's Richard and Tom.
Dude.
My God.
Dude, releasing that footage of Haney in the sparring. I mean.
What about that graphic where he said the fight was canceled? And I'm like, that's a way to promote it. Okay.
So is there
They're
truth to
no
the matter?
longer together.
So they are no longer together.
Yeah.
So who is he with technically?
PBC, and my understanding is that Leonard Ellerbe, who announced his exit from Mayweather Promotions, will still be involved with Gervonta Davis, so he's going to be okay.
So Leonard's not even with Ellerbe's not even with. Wow. Okay, so he's cleaning house over there.
Now, going back to the fight, I talk about the tortoise and the hare. Frank Martin, even though he may have won the first 2, maybe 3 rounds, I never got the sense he was on his way to victory. And the one thing about Tank Davis that I love, he understands that 36 minutes in the context of a professional fight with his power and his craft, which is very underrated, is a marathon. You can win the early sprints. And they have this thing in track and field called the rabbit that sets the pace, but those guys always drop back. They never win the race. Frank Martin was like the rabbit. He was ahead early after about 2 laps, and you're thinking, here's the problem. You got 10 more to go.
Right.
And even by the 4th, 5th round, when those rounds were kind of close and maybe you can make an argument for Frank Martin winning, I thought there was an issue. The ropes had to be hot and the corners had to be poisoned, and he didn't play with fire. He played with the blowtorch.
It was the 8th round he stopped him, correct?
Yes.
I believe it was the 7th that
got to him.
Well, he got to him,
Yeah.
but maybe it was the 6th, but maybe it was the 7th. Frank had a nice counter. He had a nice counter, and he got Gervonta right smack in the mouth, but he didn't have the power to have the. But it was a nice, well-timed counter. I honestly believe if you don't have the power, like I said, to make Tank respect you, then you're doomed. It's just a matter of time before he walks you down, figures out your timing, lays traps, counters, and takes you out, because he does have the power to be able to do that. When he landed that nice clean counter and Tank didn't trip, it made him go back for like a hot second. He went forward. I said, okay, that's all she wrote.
That nickname Tank is so apt, because what is a tank? It's durable, it's strong, it marches forward.
It steamrolls you.
And you just can't shoot bullets at it.
No.
It's going to walk right through it. And the one thing about Frank Martin, look, I think he's an athletic, solid boxer.
But not slick.
But he's not slick. Slick is really about being evasive,
right,
being tricky, and being able to counterpunch and to disappear in front of a guy. He couldn't do that, and I'm just telling you, it had to really frustrate the trainer, who's a very good one, in Derek James, because he kept telling him, you cannot languish on the ropes. You have to slide off, and you certainly cannot stick inside the corners. Mm-hmm. And when he did that for more than 2 or 3 beats, he was absolutely laying his own demise. And Gervonta Davis, I think, is on a very short list, alongside the likes of Inoue, of being one of the most vicious, violent finishers in the sport today.
He's explosive. He's like a little mini Mike Tyson. And as opposed to Mike, who goes out there and was a ball of fury from the get, Tank chooses his spots. He's selective with his punches, but when he lets his hands go and he decides to throw with purpose, it's coming mean and with bad intentions. And like I said, he does those nice counters. I love that little roll he does with that uppercut. It is really, really nice. In thinking, can we go into potential matchups right now?
Well, I have to ask you this. Is he the best guy at 135? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
And I hesitated for a second because I was thinking about Loma, for example. And as great as Loma looked this past fight, he would have to, he is a little bit older. Even Loma peaking in all powers, it would be tough. But now that he's got a little more tread in his tires, he would have to pitch a shutout, to use a baseball analogy. And that's very, very difficult to do. Like I just mentioned, if you don't have the power to have him respect you. So I think it'd be a matter of time before Tank catches him and maybe even takes him out, to be honest with you. Now, of course, who comes to mind after that is Shakur Stevenson. Shakur is young enough to maybe pitch that shutout. So I think he has the best chance to possibly do that. I don't know how entertaining it'd be, but I actually think he has the youth, the skill, and the IQ to be able to pull it off. However, to pull off that 12 round, to pull off what Frank Martin wanted to do. However, I don't think he has the power, like I said, to make him not keep marching forward. And I think if I was a betting man, Tank would probably eventually get to him as well, even though that is a much closer fight. The only person he no longer fights at lightweight that I think would give him some problems would be someone like a Teofimo, because Teofimo, who also has that slick counter left uppercut, does have the power. Much like Tank, to take you out with one shot. And he's quick. And he's fleet of foot. And he also has high boxing IQ. So if he's firing on all cylinders, that's an interesting match. But then again, he's at 140. But if Tank were to go up to 140, then I think it gets very, very interesting. And I'm telling you, then that's a different type of fight. But other than Teofimo, I think whoever you put in there, you have to favor Tank. Do you disagree?
With Loma, here's the thing. He's much more of a front foot pocket fighter. He's not that evasive guy. His legs are a little bit dulled. I mean, you talk about a shutout. I'm thinking about no-hitter. I mean, Tank is a concussive, powerful puncher, and that Tank is like a sniper. He doesn't waste a lot of bullets, but that time he pulls the trigger, it is precise, and it does damage. The problem with Shakur, and look, I understand, he said he had an injury, he came in basically one-handed. If Edwin De Los Santos has you scurrying around the ring like the Tour de France and you have the yellow jersey, how are you going to deal with the firepower of Gervonta Davis? I don't know.
But he won that fight, as boring as it was. No, but I'm saying he won that fight. So, again, he's at the age right now where I think youth is a huge factor right here, that he can pitch that shutout. And maybe it does have to be a no-hitter. But I honestly think Tank would even get to him because he's so good at cutting off the ring, too. And, again, I don't think that firepower will make him take pause.
Yeah, and the other thing about Tank that's very underrated, he has such great timing that one thing I noticed about Frank Martin, even when he threw a power punch, he was pulling back that punch. He was almost punching from the backseat, as they say. He didn't want to fully commit and try to hit through the target because if his head got over his front foot, something would be waiting for him. So even the threat of his own offense improves his defense, but Gervonta Davis rolls on, and we shall see what's next. On this undercard, it was the light heavyweight debut for David Benavidez, who pounds out a workmanlike 12-round decision over Alexander Gvozdyk. Your scores, 117-111, 116-112, 119-109. Mario, is it fair to say that the first 6 rounds were much more impressive than the back 6?
I thought Benavidez came out a little too hot and floored the gas pedal a little too much. I think all the talk about Canelo and the comparisons, he wanted to go out there and impress. And he
wanted style points.
He wanted style points. He wanted to make a dramatic statement. And look, he's going up against a guy with only one loss, who's probably the best guy at light heavyweight and Beterbiev with Gvozdyk, who, now granted, he didn't fight for like a minute, but still world-class, Olympian. He looked in incredible shape, looked like a substantial better man, and I thought he actually looked really well. Outside of him coming off a little too hot and heavy, which is normally not his style. He's a volume puncher, but he came out really hot. I think, again, all this talk about Canelo, he really wanted to make that statement. But people with the mixed reviews, they're just so fickle, man. It's sort of like when Tyson back in the day didn't knock everyone out in the first few rounds, and they thought, oh, maybe he's got his number, or maybe he's not. It's like, please, man. When you're going up against these world-class athletes, he's different. Benavidez was never a one-punch knockout guy. We're talking about Tank. Tank's a one-punch knockout guy. Beterbiev's a one-punch knockout guy. Teofimo's a one-punch knockout guy. Not Benavidez. He's a volume puncher. He's always been a volume puncher. His stoppages have come by way of attrition. And I thought he looked good. I thought his defense looked good. I liked the way he was attacking the body because he came out so hot in the beginning. I thought he did get a little tired or slowed down a little bit and became more conservative in the middle rounds. But he was still winning the fight. And look, he'd be in a really, really tough fight with both Bivol and Beterbiev, but I'm not necessarily counting him out, but it'd be very, very tough. He's talking about going back down. Obviously, you want to leave that window open for the big payday with Canelo. And I was surprised to hear him say, what would he gain, 14 pounds the next day? Man, to go back to 168, he's really putting his body through it. Obviously, we'd love to see that fight if it come to fruition, but overall, I thought Benavidez had a really nice showing.
I thought it was very solid.
Yes.
And when you go back to Benavidez, and I've gotten into arguments and conversations about this to people when they say Benavidez is a great puncher. when I think of a great puncher, I think of guys like Julian Jackson, who just saw you off with one shot. As you said, with him, there's an erosion, there's an attrition, and he works towards the knockout. Still had very good hand speed.
Yes.
And he's got that leaping left hook now. And also, the one thing that reminds me about Benavidez that's a little bit like Julio Cesar Chavez, he has very underrated defense for that style.
He looked good last night.
That
the
upper
other night.
body movement, he's not as easy to hit for being an upright fighter that likes to be inside the pocket. Now look, Gvozdyk has professional pride. He was not going to go gently into the night, got himself in great shape, looked like he worked on the Bowflex a lot. He certainly won the weigh-in. Looked very big, physically imposing.
Big, yes.
And look, I thought he had some moments late, but this was a clear 9-3, 8-4 type of victory for Benavidez. And you know what? For being his first foray at 175, I think it is solid. Now, I don't know about you, but I think once you move up in weight at age 27, 28, to me, it's like a one-way street. There's no U-turn. Just stay there and acclimate yourself to that weight class. That's my view.
Well, I agree, but obviously,
the money.
If you've got an opportunity for a potential sweepstakes and hitting the jackpot fighting a Canelo, you don't want to close that door. But I think there's a good financial windfall to be made if he were to prepare himself for the winner of Bivol Beterbiev. I think Turkey, His Excellency, would love that sort of fight, and I think he could create himself a lot of buzz and really cement himself as one of the biggest stars in the sport too. Him too, the way he's carried himself and the way he's matured and with his family. I thought Benavidez was looking very, very impressive, and I thought he looked good that night.
Yeah, one thing with Benavidez, as you move up in weight, if you stick at 675, in my view, he does not have to be the pure volume puncher, but I think he needs to work on turning over his punches. He threw a lot. I thought he slapped a little bit, did not get his knuckles fully turned over, and now he's facing bigger, stronger men.
But his hand speed is so impressive.
Yeah, the fluidity.
The fluidity and the way he's able to just let his punches go. So I was talking to Zurdo over at Brick House Boxing Club, who sparred with Benavidez a lot. And he said, yeah, you know, the crazy thing is he doesn't actually hit that hard, but it comes at you.
But hits you a lot.
But it hits you. It's like a swarm.
Yeah.
He says it comes at you a lot, and he goes upstairs, downstairs in these combos, which is incredibly impressive for a guy that size. That can be, it's like a death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
That can be just a savage. So I think his speed bodes well, especially in that weight class. Look, obviously we would like to see the Canelo fight. If he goes back down, that'd be awesome, but I'm almost just as excited if he were to get another fight or two and then potentially fight the winner of Bivol Beterbiev. That'd be great as well.
Also on this card, upset special for the WBC junior welterweight title, Alberto Puello with a split decision in 12 rounds over the highly touted Gary Antoine Russell, and WBC middleweight champion Carlos Adames retains his title, 12-round decision over Terrell Gaucher. Mario, I'm going to say this again. That little Cuban guy, that little trainer out there in Las Vegas, Ismael Salas, death, taxes, and him pulling an upset every single year.
Dude,
never fails.
He pulls an upset. Good for him. He's got a great little program right there, man.
Gary Antoine Russell was highly touted, but I'm going to say this again, and it's not like Puello had a lot of fights in between either, but at least he fought in December of last year. Gary Antoine Russell has not fought since late summer of 2023. Children, say it with me again. Activity matters. And to me, he looked like a guy that was a half beat behind, got hit with a lot of left hands, did not look as sharp before, and now he's going to have to climb back up the ladder. But congratulations to Alberto Puello and Ismael Salas. When we come back, we more of the 3 Knockdown Rule brought to you by Hustler Casino.
Catch it streaming live right on YouTube.
Welcome to the big leagues, kid.
$1.2 million.
And I'm losing in this fucking game. What the fuck?
There's a 400K flip. If I win by way, you get 10 grand.
Fucking straddle!
For my fans!
What? I read it twice! Wow! All in a call.
I'm not fucking leaving!
Raise it up.
And we're back on the 3 Knockdown Rule brought to you by Hustler Casino. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to get involved with the 3 Knockdown Rule and sponsor our fine program, we still have some slots available. Please reach out to us by emailing info@boxbid.io. Once again, that's info@boxbid.io. Boxbid.io is an online platform that is launching soon. It helps public figures and professionals in the world of boxing get sponsorships. We are proudly working with Boxbid.io.
Review preview.
All right, fight review. This Saturday, there was other boxing from Huepaville, Puerto Rico on the zone in a stunning upset. Your new IBF Junior Welterweight Champion of the World, the man from down under, Liam Paro, with a win in 12 rounds over Subriel Matias. Mario, the Boogeyman, was slayed.
Bro.
Oof.
He was a 7-1 underdog going into his backyard in Puerto Rico. That place was on fire. They were ready to welcome home their hero and to see this beating. Matias's last 5 opponents quit on the stool. All signs pointed to he was to sort of be the anointed new guy at junior welter. Paro had other plans. Man, these Australians, much like Kambosos did when he went into the backyard of Teofimo Lopez, have their own plans, strong-minded, strong-willed. I thought, okay, Matias is a slow starter, but that dude didn't let his hands go for like 5 rounds.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell? And then Paro was just simply outwork. He wasn't doing anything spectacular other than beating him to the punch, letting his combinations go, and when trouble seemed to maybe potentially show its head, he would hug and he would hard. He was fighting smart, and he did enough to win the fight. Before you know it, you're like, oh my God, he's running out of rounds. He's winning this fight. I hope they don't screw him. And they didn't. And even Matias knew. He applauded, and he knew. He took it like a gentleman and like a man. And I was blown away and sort of shocked by the fact that this kid, who was also an undefeated fighter, he was no chump, came and did what he did in someone else's backyard. There were those rumors about Teofimo, who we brought up a lot, actually. I brought up in this show, wanting to fight Matias and stuff. I can see why, because I can see tailor-made for him, coming right forward, not letting those hands go. So, yeah, we've got a new player, and now it makes that weight division pretty interesting.
Liam Paro did a great job of boxing, initiating the attack, beating Matias to the punch, but he knew when to start and he knew when to end. He either smother and then initiate a clinch or slide outside and pivot. And the whole night, Matias was almost a step behind. And look, Matias had some moments. The storms were going to come, but he weathered the storm. And Liam Paro's activity and just his output was impressive. And one thing about Matias, look, he's a very physical, hard-nosed fighter. I thought he slapped a lot with his punches. He did not get his knuckles across. I kept thinking of Rudy Hernandez because, look, there was a lot of, contact being made. Never thought he actually turned his punches over properly, consistently.
I thought, though, his offense never really got into a groove. He couldn't fight any sort of rhythm. He didn't let his hands go at all. I was just really shocked by, and maybe he was befuddled by the footwork, the timing, and everything Paro was throwing at him. But tip of the hat to him, man. Way to go over there and do his thing.
Yeah, this is how big of an upset it is. If you look at the Ring Magazine ratings, Teofimo Lopez is the ring champion. Number 1 is Devin Haney, based on the fact that April 20th may be expunged. And number 2 with Subriel Matias. Coming into this fight, in fact, Liam Paro was not in the top 10. There's going to be some shakeups in that Ring Magazine ratings coming into the month of July. But he's 25-0, 15 knockouts. And I just believe that when a guy goes on the road in a hostile environment, in a lively atmosphere, and just does the damn thing, that is impressive. And Liam Paro was absolutely that.
It reminded me of Orlando Salido going over there.
To Juanma.
Great
I
fights.
went to the rematch, by the way. What an atmosphere that was, the
great
rematch.
Fights, yes.
Mario, moving on to the fight preview this Friday night from Las Vegas on ESPN Plus for the WBO featherweight title. Rafa Espinoza, the tallest light featherweight that I've ever seen, takes on Sergio Chirino.
We like him.
Mario, I think this to me is a bit of a trap fight. Because if you are Rafa Espinoza, you pull the upset, you do the unexpected, you're not supposed to beat Robeisy Ramirez, now you're facing this rugged unknown guy. Guess what? You're facing the type of guy that you were against Ramirez. That's the mark of, can you be consistent after punching the lottery ticket?
Well, we're going to find out Friday night.
Yeah.
And I love that he's back in there already. That's an exciting weight class, too. So, look, if he wants to climb the top of the mountain, these are the kind of fights you got to take.
Right, and should he win this fight, Espinoza, there could be a shot of a rematch with Robeisy Ramirez later this year.
News and notes.
Moving on to news and notes, we talked about this a bit earlier. Richard Schaefer, he's like Mr. Cotter. He's back. He's named the CEO of Mayweather Promotions, which, by the way, is moving their operations to Los Angeles. I find this interesting.
And he's going to remain in Vegas, huh?
Yes. I don't know. I don't know.
Did he fire Ellerby for Schaefer, essentially, or Schaefer's going in there and cleaning house? So what are you hearing as far as the back?
Well, look, they parted ways, and they had one of those notices like, hey, we want to thank you for all the years of work. But I don't know what it was. Did Leonard Ellerby jump off the Titanic after the iceberg, or was he jettisoned? I really don't know. But if you look at the Mayweather Promotions roster, there's no more Tank Davis. He's not associated with them. They have a good young prospect in Carmel Morton. But I'm just saying, you need earners. Now, Richard Schaefer has a pretty good track record going back to his days at Golden Boy, and he signed some other good talent that didn't get a chance to shine in his other ventures like Ringstar. But I do wonder, what is this company's plan for the next 3 years? Because the bottom line is, when you have a promotional company, you know what matters the most? It's not the promoter. It's the fighters.
Absolutely. Is this, and I'm not trying to spill any conspiracies here, but is this Turkey working behind the scenes with the consolidation of the promoters?
You know, if it came to that, and we're going to have one of those questions later, I don't know if Mayweather Promotions, with all due respect, is considered one of the premier elite trainers.
Right.
We know the brand name promoters that he wants to work with,
yes,
that have 60, 70 fighters under their roster and at least 4 or 5 world champions. Right now, Mayweather Promotions, look, I give them and Leonard a lot of credit. They built Gervonta Davis. Gervonta Davis now is one of the pillars of the sport. He matters. He's important. Every time he fights, it is a big evening for the sport of boxing. But guess what? He's not with them anymore. Floyd Mayweather was nowhere to be found in Las Vegas. Here's what I found was interesting. This past weekend, Mario.
And Tank did a little tweet, right?
Oh, they did a little
screenshot it. What did you?
No,
what
when
happened?
Gervonta tweets, you know what you have to do? Screenshot it immediately. In fact, I have a.
You're good about the screenshots.
In my phone.
Why? Did somebody tell them to delete it?
Oh, he does some of the most incendiary tweets. So it is a race to screenshot. I got a gallery. What I might do is go to Kinko's and have him print it up and do like an art gallery.
What did he say about Floyd?
Oh, he's a bitch ass, this, and a BA, and this and that, and
Really?
he's a hater. And I'm like, okay, gonna screenshot that, make sure that. And I send it all to you guys to make sure you have a copy.
Right.
But it's the strangest thing. It's like, Tank, you're a really great fighter. I want to give you a little life lesson. In the modern day internet, once you put something out,
Right.
Someone's gonna screenshot it and put it in their folder.
Yeah,
there's no
someone's
taking
view.
it back. You might as well just leave it up there.
Right.
Trust me, I've been through the same thing. You've been through the same thing. But it's kind of funny in a sense that he does it all the time. But here's what I found interesting, Mario. Did you know last weekend was the 100th fight card of the MGM Grand, which has certainly become one of the boxing hubs the last 30 years.
Yes, and they had a nice little package.
And they had this whole thing, a tribute.
nice, yeah.
They had like a little museum. You know who was not involved in the video feature that was played on the pay-per-view? Someone pointed this out to me. They had like a little video montage.
Floyd wasn't involved?
Floyd was not involved.
Huh.
In fact,
He was in the montage, but he wasn't involved.
But he wasn't like talking about
Correct.
it. And then all the events at the hotel. I mean, there was a time.
Because Oscar was there. I saw Oscar involved.
Okay, there was a time, Mario, if you remember, because you've been to the MGM Grand, there's like 3 halls, and it's like an Emerald City building, right?
Of course.
His mural was on one of the big sides.
I remember.
And there used to be, as you walked in through the lobby where you go to check in, there used to be a little like exhibit of all of Floyd's robes, gloves. So it was very clear, like, this is Floyd's house. So on the 100th anniversary that you are celebrating, your persona non grata? Was it like Stalin
What are you
erasing
liking
you?
that to?
Didn't want to be involved, and maybe Tank didn't want him involved. You didn't find that strange at all?
Yeah, well, I saw him in the package. I just figured he wasn't getting interviewed because of Tank and petty stuff.
Well, I don't think he was even at the promotion. I didn't see any interviews from him on press row. I really, it was almost like he was not involved because he probably wasn't. Mario, moving on. Here's what's interesting. The WBA has ordered that the monster Inoue has to fight his mandatory MJ Akhmadaliev.
Ooh.
I'm going to say this
It's a
right
tough
now,
little fight
and I
right there.
tweeted it last week. Out of all the guys he's faced at 22, Stephen Fulton, Tapales, the Louis Neri, MJ is the toughest guy, and they know it. I've heard people that are associated with Inoue. They understand it's the toughest. And I'm not saying that they're going to skirt it. The word is they might delay it because there's a deadline of you have to do this by September. And they're thinking, no. We'll do it. We'll do it on our time. But Mario, should he beat Akhmadaliev? That's a hell of a run. That is truly cleaning out a division at 122.
No, it truly is. And that's why he's in the pound for pound 1 and 1A.
Yes.
Because of the people he's faced and how frequently he's been facing them. So, yeah, hopefully, and I know we talked to Bob about this, we'll get to see him in the States soon.
Yeah, hopefully more closer to Dodger Stadium than Yankee Stadium. Moving on to Ask Mario. Here's one from Kato's Knife 1. Gentlemen, if Tank fights Loma and wins, will the win be tainted by the fact that Tank's team waited so long to make the fight happen? Keep this in mind, Mario. Loma's now 37.
Yes, of course it'll be tainted. Just like Pacquiao Mayweather was tainted because it happened, I thought, 5-6 years too late. I think this one will too. It's not an easy out, but then again, at the end of the day, he is a little longer than a tooth. He wasn't peaking in all his powers, and I wish this fight would have happened 3-4 years ago.
Agreed. Carnivore Trucker. Who do you see being a formidable opponent for Tank? Obviously, you think Keo, but that's at 140.
Correct. I still think, yes, correct. He's the most dangerous. I still think Shakur has the ability to pull it off, but again, he'd have to pitch almost a no-hitter. And I think Tank, I would still favor him, and I think he would eventually get to him. Do you disagree?
Mario, in the past, I have called Shakur the modern-day Pernell Whitaker. He'd have to get his sweet pea against Chavez on. He would have to really be on top of his game. And yet, you're right, though. Offensively, he has to do enough that he's not stinking out the joint. Because I have to be consistent. I always like the aggressive fighters.
Well, so do I. But look, he stunk out the joint against, who was the last Puerto Rican kid he fought?
De Los Santos.
De Los Santos.
No, but there's a difference. Tank would be the A side here. Remember, the bias or the judging would be like, you know what? Who's the A side here? That matters.
I agree. But I think he realizes that as well. And he's been calling him out. So maybe I think Shakur, and I don't know the kid, but I'm assuming because he's a competitor, heard all the talk about how boring the fight was and how he shouldn't be in prime time anymore. And I'm like, okay, I think he's got a chip on his shoulder now. I think he's got something to prove. It's not like he's not skilled. And I think he sees what Frank Martin was able to pull off for 5-6 rounds and says to himself, I can pull that off for 12 rounds.
Right. Because he is much more seasoned than Frank.
That's what I'm saying. I think he says, I can pull that off for 12 rounds.
But Mario, let me just say this. Let me give some advice to Shakur from the Uncle Kimster. Shakur, if you're actually at the bargaining table for this fight, and let's say you have a percentage in mind, let's say 40%, because you are the B-side. It is Tank that is the pay-per-view draw out of you two. He's the one who's the bigger draw, okay?
I think he knows that.
Or let's say you say to yourself, if I don't get $5 million for this fight, I'm going to walk away. And if you're at a position where you have to take a 65-35 split in Tank's favor, or you, quote, unquote, only get $3.8 million, you better take it, because sometimes you better parlay the win. Do not over-negotiate to a point where you're just going to bitch and moan about not getting the fight. I have never seen a fight won that was turned down, Mario. Doesn't work that way.
You're absolutely right. And where else is he going to go where he's going to make close to that money? There isn't another option.
And then what if he wins?
Yeah, it's exactly
Then
it.
where is he?
I think he feels very confident that he can. That's the most fascinating fight at 135 right now. And I love me some William Cepeda, but I think he's sort of custom made for Tank too.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? But hey, he's as fire as
But you know what? He'd make it fun. He'd make it fun.
And I'd love to see it. But I think currently at the weight class, Shakur probably has the best shot, but I'd still lean towards Tank.
By the way, you know who's rated number 1 in the WBA, the belt that Tank has? Cameron. He's in line.
Dude, listen, I love that kid. He's a lot of fun. Wouldn't you want to see that fight too?
Absolutely. Zepeda's the type of guy, he's a great dance partner for anybody in that
and you know he's going to bring it.
Yeah, he's not stinking it
up anything.
He ain't stinking it out. You don't need to bring the raid or anything like that. Here's one from David. Mario, Turkey's boxing league sounds fantastic. 12 divisions, 15 guys each, presumably more money as they prize fight their way up the rankings. However, I suspect established stars like Canelo/Tank may reject it. They already have the power. Can a league start without them?
He's got a good point. Turkey's
good
basically trying to be like the UFC, which I respect and would be great for the fans. We'd get to see the fights we want to see. But these guys would be taking a step backwards, essentially, if they were to do that. However, Turkey's got so much damn money, and the resources are so deep that he may make them happy with what he's offering too. And we're not talking about a guy who's struggling out there. He might be able to take care of everyone handsomely.
You know what matters in pay-per-view sales, though? Opponents. B-sides matter. It's as Kathy Duval once told me, Steve, this is not like a concert. You may go see Janet Jackson or Michael by yourself or Madonna, as I show my age once again, but that's the truth. Like, you really don't care who else.
Taylor Swift or something.
Okay, yeah, Taylor Swift. Like, Taylor Swift fans don't really care who's opening up.
No,
they
of course
want
not.
the main event.
Right.
In boxing, it has been shown, even with De La Hoya, Mayweather, Pacquiao, who the opponent is actually matters.
Sure.
It impacts sales.
You do need a dance partner.
So
Correct.
let's say those guys say, no, we're good. We are a galaxy upon ourselves. Okay, but let's say every other major fighter in those divisions is wrapped up in the Riyadh Season League. Who are you fighting?
That's a very good point.
So it kind of goes both ways. We shall see. Here's a question from Ignacio Ortiz. How high of a ceiling does Raymond Murataya have talent-wise, and what do you think of Brandon Lee, my cousin, signing with Queensberry? Well, first of all, with Brandon Lee, he's got to get going. I don't remember the last time he fought with him.
I can't remember the time.
Right.
And I like Murataya. I think he's a tough kid, and I again want to see him be more active and want to see him on screen. So
His power at 135 when he's on top of his game, he's an absolute sniper. He's a little bit measured in his approach, but in terms of talent, I've heard about the things he's done. And Robert Garcia, we've talked about him a lot, and Robert said, Steve, I know he's the type of guy, he has to be a mandatory because no champion's going to volunteer and say, I want to fight him. Here's the thing with Raymond. He is what Teddy Roosevelt, he's what I call a Teddy Roosevelt fighter. He speaks softly and he carries a big stick, but he's a very, very reserved personality. So it is about the fight. I wish he was a little bit more colorful, but he is what he is. Here's one from Bob. Very interesting question because this leads into something I wanted to ask you about. How much do these clauses, rehydration, affect the ability for the Tank team to make competitive fights with top fighters? Shakur, Haney, Loma, etc. I'm guessing a lot.
I'm glad you asked that. I wanted to bring that up. Talk about taint. We were talking about if he were to fight Loma, how much would his victory be tainted, being that he's facing him now at almost 38 years old? I think there's sort of a taint in his big victories, like even against Ryan Garcia, with these damn clauses. It's like he needs an edge, he needs an advantage, and it goes against his whole dangerous, explosive punching persona. I wish they wouldn't do that. If you make the weight, then you make the weight, and you're coming in on whatever you come in at.
Yeah.
I am not a fan of these
Well, Mario, that's
clauses.
my question. You saw Ryan Garcia, who we'll get to in a bit. He is not begging, but he is asking or campaigning for a rematch. Here's the problem. Ryan, you actually created your own weight class on the fly with Devin Haney at 143, based on your experience at 136 last year against Tank. Tank's going to say, well, wait a minute. I beat you. I control things. So here's the thing. Should you make that rematch? That weigh-in, those clauses of when the weigh-ins would take place, what the weigh-in's going to be, what's the rehydration clause, and maybe Ryan says, you know what? Tank's still making more money with me than anybody. I could still blow off the weight in the You think what a mess that could be.
It could be. We just talked about the other fights. It didn't even come to me as far as the next fights I want to see. I want to see Shakur. I'd love to see El Camarón.
Right.
There's a few
Loma.
fights. Loma. There's a few fights I'd like to see prior.
But this is the money business. What fight brings in the most sales? It is Ryan Garcia.
Even over Shakur, you would say?
Yes. Oh my God. You think
Well,
Shakur and Tank would do 1.2 million pay-per-view buys?
True. That's true. You know what? You're right, because on the heels of the Haney fight, you're exactly right. But hold on a second. Where would they fight? Ryan ain't coming close to 140.
That's my point.
He ain't
That's
coming close to
my
140.
point. Like,
So they're not gonna agree on that.
Mario, you know what's interesting about Tank? And I think the commissions have to make a rule here. When it comes to certain weigh-ins, they do the real weigh-in at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning. Then they do the ceremonial one at 3 in front of all the people. Tank Davis, because he's actually fighting at the weight that he should be, all his weigh-ins are at 35 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They made Ryan weigh in that way. Frank Martin looked like a prisoner of war after about a month. And people say, well, it's only 7-8 hours. Bro, that's 2 meals.
That's exactly right.
The rehydration process and the process to replenish your body.
Exactly. That's what kind of, I don't want to say it.
Don't you think?
It takes it away a little bit. It takes away from the back. You know what I mean? Like when Tyson was out here knocking fools out, you didn't even think twice about it. It's like it kind of takes away from his most dangerous man.
Why do you think Devin Haney squeezing into those weights? All his weigh-ins are at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. He makes it that way.
Of course.
And by the way, what's interesting is I believe that all of the commissions or the ABC needs to say all of the weigh-ins, regardless, are at this time.
Right.
That's it.
I agree.
Now, whether you do rehydration, whether there's an IBF clause, we don't care. But the original real weigh-in, they are now weaponizing weigh-ins. I talk to more and more trainers who agree with me, thinking, Steve, this thing is being gerrymandered.
Of course.
And the fighter that has the physical advantage and is the A side, now they get to play around and say, okay, is it better for us early in the morning or starving the guy out for another 6-7 hours?
Right.
And I'm thinking, when did this become not the fight game? You know?
It's become the take advantage game, the political game.
Canada Chris, do you think Turki Al-Sheikh buying the major promoters to create a boxing league is viable without the involvement of the sanctioning organizations?
Again, he has enough resources where he could make it very viable, profitable for all, and get the fights that we actually want to see. At this point, it's just a rumor. So I don't know. Who are the other promoters that were? I know Golden Boy, Top Rank,
Queensberry,
Matchroom,
Eddie Hearn, right?
Yeah. So all the big players.
The reality is this: as someone,
but we essentially would have the UFC, Kim.
Right. Well, look, you and I have been leading this charge. Belts matter. The sanctioning bodies matter. They actually help facilitate fights when they do their job. The problem I have with the sanctioning bodies in the last 5-6 years, they are now getting in the way. They are now part of the problem. How certain fighters are number one for 3 years, they don't get their mandatory shot. How other champions are not forced to either give up a title or actually fight.
Right.
Guys are allowed.
Hostage.
Right. The Charlo situation, you basically held up a whole division because one guy was having personal issues. Look, I care about Charlo. You know what I really care about? Fights, to be honest with you. So I believe that the sanctioning bodies, when they act correctly, are actually a necessary evil. Now they're just a nuisance. And that's the reality. Final question from Ryan Longer. Who was your favorite Major League Baseball player when you were a kid?
Oh, random. Well, as a pitcher, of course, Fernando
Orale.
Valenzuela. Growing up, only guy to win the Cy Young Award and Rookie of the Year.
And MVP.
And MVP. 18 years old.
1981.
Isn't that crazy? At 18. Always loved me some Garvey. And Tony Gwynn was always great. And
Mr. Padre.
You know who I always liked too, just because he was a handsome guy and buff and first guy to hit 40-40?
Oh, Jose
Canseco.
By the way, I was actually at your house one day, and I remember we were doing something, and Jose Canseco walked in.
Right.
And we were talking outside, just like 12, 13 years ago. And you were inside, and I was with some other friends. I forgot what we were doing that night. And I go, hey, fellas, did Jose Canseco just walk in? And he hung out that night.
He hung out. He's a great guy. He's a great guy. I'd still say, we were talking about this, I think on the text thread that you were on, Barry Bonds probably the most talented feared hitter.
Put him in the
I've
Hall
ever
of Fame,
seen.
please.
Do you not agree with that? What was that stat that I sent?
If you took away his MVP seasons,
seven of them.
He's still a 400 guy, basically. He's still a monster.
That's it. He's still a monster. Doesn't he belong? And wouldn't you say
it's
the most talented player you've seen in our lifetime?
As far as I'm concerned, without him, Roger Clemens, A-Rod, and some other players, and Pete Rose, it's not a complete Hall of Fame. You can agree or disagree. That's the way I feel.
I agree with you. 100%.
Mario, my first favorite athlete ever, and my name Steve was given to me by my mom because we all have a Korean name, our government name, and you all get take an American name.
Steve Garvey?
She loved Garvey.
Yeah.
Yes, I was a big Dodger fan growing up.
Yeah.
And then when I became a little bit older, my all-time favorite, and Garvey's up there, but the guy that I just absolutely cherish, and by the way, today as we tape, Monday, June 17th, is the 10th anniversary of his unfortunate passing, Tony Gwynn. Tony Gwynn.
Greatest natural hitter.
Well, alongside Ted Williams.
Alongside Ted Williams, who's
San Diego.
But Mexican too.
Yeah,
by the way.
people
Did
don't
you
know that. Yeah.
He's Mexican. Ted Williams is Mexican. Yes, but his swing, and bro, you never had to worry about Tony Gwynn being on any kind of steroids or anything. My guy was built like the Padre logo.
He was. He became the Padre logo.
You know what's crazy about Tony Gwynn, though? He was a great athlete. A lot of gold gloves. Used to be a point guard at San Diego
Stole
State.
52 bases.
He's mad athletic.
Got drafted by the Clippers. Now, it was round 7, but still.
He was a hell of an athlete.
All-time great Jerry curl early on.
Exactly. You know, speaking of, not to keep transitioning all this, who I would say the best athlete in team sports is today, a baseball player, Mookie Betts. Dude, he was at my golf tournament. That fool can hit. Yeah. Not only is he a great golf player, you know he can dunk in basketball. He bowls. He can bowl 300. Dude, that guy's an incredible athlete, as opposed to being probably the best baseball player right now. And he's my size.
So he would have won the Superstars competition. Remember that as a kid?
Yes, but he's incredible. You know what I mean, as far as just all around. Because what Micah Parsons and all that. Remember we said, I think they were asking him 500. No, forget the fighting. They said, if you see 500 pitches, how many of those do you think you'd be? He said, I'd hit at least 250.
No, he wouldn't.
He said half. I go, 250. And then Mookie and the guy said, he goes, bro, he wouldn't get one. He wouldn't get one. Pipe said, you know how hard it is to get to hit a major league fastball?
In high school, Montebello High School back then was in the Whitmont League.
And this is a professional football player, a professional athlete. He's still not hitting. That's how hard baseball is. That's my point.
Montebello High School, when I played, we were in the Whitmont League, so we played some pretty good teams. Lacerna had guys that made the pros. Willie Adams was a pitcher, went to Stanford. Okay, and then there was also guys at El Rancho. There was guys. So we had about 4 or 5 guys in our league that got drafted by the major leagues, and they decided, forget college, we're going to play ball. None of them made it out of rookie ball, except for Willie Adams. Willie Adams was a pitcher, had a pretty good career at Stanford. I could not even see the ball. I heard the ball go by.
Right.
He threw a curveball that had me ducking by the third base, and it hit the outside corner. I said, I should have studied harder because I'm not making the majors.
People do not understand
lasted
how
1 year in the
difficult it
majors.
is. Look at that.
It was a surreal moment. So one day, it was like in March. It was like 3-4 years later, and they were doing spring training, and they're both in the Cactus League, the Padres and the A's. And I happened to see a highlight where Willie Adams, a guy that struck me out on 3 pitches every time, Tony Gwynn nearly tore his head off with a liner right back up the middle. And I remember watching it, and I said, Tony, that's why I'm doing this, and that's why you're my idol, and that's why you're doing what you're doing. I don't think people understand, like, most people that played,
even other professional athletes, Kim,
can't hit baseballs.
No,
I could take a guy to, like, right now, even at my age, I can get to a cage in 80, and I could do okay. You take guys that have never played baseball, they are so afraid of that little thing coming at them. And plus, Micah Parsons is too stiff to actually swing a baseball bat.
Any football player, especially even if you haven't played baseball, like they said, the difference between 90 and 95, you know what it is? A strike.
It is. Exactly.
It's a strike.
Final flurries.
Mario, moving on to final flurries, we brought up Ryan Garcia on Saturday night at the MGM Grand. He was involved in a bit of a walkout bout with Caleb Plant. How out of line is he with this whole thing?
I have a question. Do you think Ryan is looking at boxing right now like WWE, and he's just full on accepted this heel role? And
yes.
He's like Roddy Piper, like a villain?
Yes, and I'm very upset that you made that comparison to a fine man of integrity and honor like the Rowdy one. You ought to take that back.
I did an old school reference right there.
Yeah.
but seriously, because he's gone full villain, full heel, and it's bothering a lot of people. I got to say, the only thing that really, I find it all kind of funny and entertaining, but the only thing that really bothers me, I don't like when him or anybody, uses the Lord's name in vain, will say, praise Jesus, and then on the very next sentence,
my D.
Or I screwed your wife.
Yeah.
Like, yo, bro, you can't be saying praise Jesus and talk about saving the kids, and then I was with your wife. Do you not see the problem right there? So that's the only thing, like, you know, if you're going to troll or be this character, then you got to know how to play the game. You can't. There's lines, at least.
Mario,
maybe I'm old school, but there's lines I don't think you can cross.
There's a reason why his entourage / bodyguard crew is bigger than MC Hammer's now.
Does he have a big...
He rolls deep.
Does he roll deep?
Yes. If you watch what happened on Saturday night, Caleb Plant is a ballsy guy.
Dude,
because he was outnumbered.
Caleb Plant will go up to anyone. I like that. We've seen it. We've seen him smack one of the Charlos right there. He's about that life. I like him. I like the way he carries himself. Aside from I like him as a fighter, I like the way he carries himself, and he's a gentleman, and he's always well spoken. He's a family man now. You can't be like just people aren't going to take that lightly.
Yeah.
You can't just be talking about that. That is surprising, and I can't imagine that Golden Boy is happy with this behavior.
Yeah, and by the way, that poker tournament we talked about with Hustler Casino, I guess Ryan's going to be there this weekend.
Good luck.
Good luck with that. Mario, you're traveling a lot. Well, you were in Boston this past weekend.
Yeah, man, I've been doing these things on the weekend, these like Comic-Cons. Now, you may be saying, well, you're not a comic book guy. But
did you dress up as Darth Vader? Is that what you're doing?
Here's the thing.
Chewbacca?
So these Comic-Cons aren't just about comic books anymore. They're different TV shows, movies. So now there's a lot of, some are more focused on others. Sometimes they have 90s con with all 90s. Sometimes they have holiday con with all holiday stuff. This one was a bit of a hodgepodge. So they had people from a lot of the Marvel and DC films, even people like Chevy Chase, who was right next to me, right? And just random people. Who's the other? Like John Travolta, like just random people. And they'll sign. You do all this stuff, but you see like full-grown adults who dress up in these outfits, bro. I was just there as Mario.
As Mario.
I was there, you know what I mean? But, people will come, they'll sign a lot of, like, Saved by the Bell stuff or a lot of different stuff. Take photos, you hang out, you do like a panel, you talk. And so it's an eclectic group, but it's a lot of fun. So I was in Boston. This weekend, I'm going to be in Seattle. So if anyone's listening or checking us out in the Seattle area, come to the Comic-Con out there. I'm going to be hanging out in the Great Northwest. Nice time of year to be in Seattle right now and hanging out. We'll hang out, take some pictures, have a little talk.
And there he is.
Drink some tequila.
The Del Griffith of 3 Knockdown Rule. By the way,
you need to finish mine. I drank too much this weekend.
Hey, by the way, let me know if Facts of Life is ever going to be there. If Blair shows up, I might make an appearance.
Dude, you had a little crush on Blair, dude?
Who didn't?
Wow.
Although Tootie was cute.
I was going to say, that's more your flavor, Tootie. You like Tootie. Right. You like D on What's Happening. Remember What's Happening?
What you talking about, Willis? Anyway.
That's different strokes, fool.
Mario. No. That you're right. Quick question. How was the Von Erich movie?
Bro, so
sad,
on the way
sad.
home, I finally saw the Iron Claw because we're pro wrestling fans. Yeah. This was about the Von Erich family. A little before our time, but then they were a little bit when we were kids. Mid-80s, too. If you knew this wasn't a true story, you wouldn't believe it. I don't know if you're familiar with all the deaths, but I'm just gonna break it down. It's not like it's worth seeing, but it's very, very sad. Zac Efron did a really good job too. He's unrecognizable though. My guy looks really different there. 5 kids, right? There was 5 Von Erichs. Von Erich's not even the real last name, by the way. That was the mother's maiden name. The first son dies as a child, like around 9-10 years old, a medical condition. I'm cutting to the chase. The second son, who was wrestling about to fight for the championship, was in Japan. His intestine bursted. He died in the bathroom in Japan. That's 2 sons you have to bury right there. The third son got hurt wrestling, damaged his shoulder, had to go into surgery. One of those weird things in surgery, he got into a coma. He wasn't the same. He was kind of a little slow and struggling. He got depressed, essentially OD'd, killed himself. That's 3 deaths. The fourth son, who did eventually beat Ric Flair and was the champion for a hot minute, ended up getting in a motorcycle accident, lost his leg. He couldn't deal with the depression, shot himself. 4 kids. You got 5 kids. 4 of the 5 kids you had to bury. I would die. I went home. I was telling my wife. I said, I wanted all these kids. I go, the more kids you have, the more chances there is for stuff to go wrong. And it kind of woke. I'm like, I don't want any more kids, dude. I'm good with the 3. But so the 5th son, he ended up being married to his wife for 40 years. He had the family come to him. They had 4 kids. He had a ranch, and everybody ended up living together. But it was so incredibly sad. Just think about those parents having to bury 4 of their 5 kids, and they're still known as one of the greatest wrestling dynasties.
They were hot
Isn't
in
that
Texas.
crazy? If you saw that in a movie, you wouldn't see. But I'm saying, if you saw that and you wouldn't know it was a true story, you wouldn't think it's like, come on, nobody has that bad of luck. They really were like a cursed family. And yes, you're right. I know what you're going to say. It was very geographical back in the day.
There were regions.
Yeah. They were regions.
Hot in Texas.
They made references, Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. It was really cool to see, but man, it was sad. It was a depressing movie.
Vice does a series on the inner workings of pro wrestling.
A lot of tragic
And,
endings.
and they did one on that family, and it was sad because they had another son who didn't grow. He was really small, and he didn't really fit in. Like, he just had this like
There
thing.
was 6 sons?
There was another one that was really small.
Maybe that's the one that died early.
No, I don't. I kind of forget.
I know for a fact
Yeah.
4 died.
Well, you said there was one that was medical. There was
Right.
like 9.
But they all died. Yeah.
I'm
But
saying maybe that one.
Yeah.
maybe that was the little one. Maybe that was
Yeah.
the little one.
And by the way-
but before the 5 sons died. So
By the way,
who does like who? Can you imagine?
Speaking of territories, Vice did a special series on certain territories, and the stories these guys tell, hilarious. But it's also sad and vicious and violent,
Dude,
but also funny. Maury, speaking of all that, finally gotten around to Rich and Shameless.
Yo, that was a good recommendation, and I saw the episode you were talking about with Mark Gastineau and Rick Anderson.
Rick Elvis Parker with
Rick
Tim
Par-
Doc
Anderson. Pardon me, Rick Parker,
Yeah.
who was like, he's like a white wannabe Don King, but he looks like a cartoon
More like
character.
more like a 99-cent version. Of
Yes,
King.
I wanna be. Yes, 99 cents. Yeah, a ghetto version. I don't want to give too much away because I think people should check it out. But it is so incredibly sad, and it was so unnecessary. I feel though he should have took the money in the beginning.
The $500,000.
Dude, $500,000 in the 80s.
As a fighter of his caliber, because I remember.
Yo, that's a lot of money.
I
It's a lot
remember-
of money now. Imagine in the 80s. That's
well,
a lot
that
of
was
money.
early 90s.
Okay,
Or whatever.
Still,
but
he was like 89.
I
90.
remember Tim Doc Anderson. He was a solid like journeyman, right? Type of guy that'd fight George Foreman on the way up.
Yeah.
He was an opponent. It would have taken him 50 years to make $500,000.
That's what
to be
I'm
honest.
saying.
I mean,
Why did he should have took it? And then he went over with the gun, and it was so sad, and he's still in prison.
Yeah. Because all the interviews they did with him was from one of those prison phones.
I know.
The other Rich and Shameless that I saw recently, and I got to still catch up to most of them, the one on a former Clipper by the name of Lorenzen Wright. He was a lottery pick who made about $70, $80 million, ended up coming back home to Memphis, played for the Grizz, and the way he was killed and by who he was, I don't want to give it away, sad. It's like a fictional tale that was true, and the mother would not let her son's death go in vain. That's all I'm going to say. When you watch the Lorenzen Wright episode, it is tragic.
Did they do one on Ray Caruth?
Not yet.
Wouldn't that be a great one?
Oh, my God.
No?
That, yeah.
Gosh.
Oh,
that
they
was
did
so
one
sad.
on Yasiel Puig, how they smuggled him. That's a very interesting
Okay.
story.
I'm
That
gonna
one
check.
came out about a month ago.
Okay, I'm gonna go back and watch a lot of those. One thing we got to check out is they've got a new Brat Pack documentary.
Oh.
So which should be interesting with the original Brat Pack. You know, Rob Lowe, Emilio Estevez, Judd Nelson, all that. 40 years
40,
from when
God.
they, dude, isn't that
God,
crazy,
you're old.
dude. Talking to Jim Lampley over
Yeah,
there. With
that
it.
is true. All right, well, that's it for this week's edition of the 3 Knockdown Rule. Again, if you want to sponsor our show, email us, info@boxbid.io. On behalf of Mario Lopez, Smoking Tim Frazier, and Tino on the edits, this has been the 3 Knockdown Rule, brought to you by Hustler Casino.